Chimera is delighted to bring you some of Scotland's most exciting new voices in our Brave New Words readings. Joining us from Algiers is Ian Green, a fantasy writer from Aberdeen. Ian has a PhD in clinical epigenetics, and his short fiction has been widely broadcast and performed, and has won the BBC Radio 4 Opening Lines competition and the Futurebook Future Fiction Prize. He is reading from The Gauntlet and The Fist Beneath, the first book in his debut epic fantasy trilogy out with Head of Zeus this summer.
The whale, the salmon, the squid, the seal, the shark, the shell, the eel, the bone. Tuliok hunting chorus. The circular altar was an uncompromising black stone except for 4 incandescent runes inscribed around its edge. The flat-topped altar stone absorbed all light, a slick black that emerged from the wet grey of the floor. The runes burned with a white-hot intensity, and the prisoners shackled to the cavern walls averted their eyes, looking anywhere but at those 4 lights, that seemed to leave an impression not only on the eyes, but also on the mind beneath, a sickly image burned into the deepest recess of thought. Other than the glare from the runes, the cavern was lit only by the dull glow of luminescent fungi, a pallid grey light that felt wet and cold. The prisoners huddled and waited for what they knew was coming. They didn't look at the altar, or the runes, or their feral captive, now tied and bound to that abnormal stone. The Tuliok tied to the altar strained taut muscles against her bonds, and the rope cut deep into her scales, but she felt no give in the restraints. Her head was resting face down by one of the runes. She recognized it as the old Ferran tongue, but didn't know its meaning. She knew only the 4 runes of their judges, inscribed on standing stones at the northern coast of her people's land, at the border of Old Ferran. Her clan had captured one of those stones during the Great Revolt, the season the Blight Waters came and the Rot Storm rose, hundreds of years before. It sat in the clan hall. She'd played with coloured shells in the shadow of the captured menhir, and knew those runes, the runes of the Ferran judges, as well as her own language. The rune carved on the altar was something complex and angular and foreign. It had burned into her mind as the nameless figures bound her to the altar, grey-skinned goblins with black orb eyes scarpering around the feet of tall humans who secured her bonds, limbs oddly jointed and stretched, hands strong. She'd been carried limp from her shackles against the cavern wall, under the effect of some skein spell, but once she was bound, she felt the will return to her movements, and again she strained. Tuliok were powerfully built, and she knew herself to be the pride of her clan. Fully 7 foot tall, with 3 long claws and a thumb spike on each webbed hand, and a powerful tail. Her head still bore the yellow crest of a juvenile, however. None of her strength helped. The binding seemed to tighten whenever she moved. Hissing behind a thick cloth gag with the exertion and the pain, she finally grew still, and stared into the black stone of the altar, away from the rune. It was almost as if she could see distant points of light in the black stone, immeasurably deep, like blazefish in the water off the reef on the night of a new moon, specks hinting at something more in the darkness. The new moon was always the best night to hunt, when the light was dim and the fish and beasts hid in their holes. Trapped, it was also the night when she would pray to the great whale to protect her, for Tuliok were not the only ones who hungered in the depths. She remembered hunting with her father and her broodmates, cutting through cool water. She felt so dry, sick with the air, so long from the water and her family. She closed her eyes, and for a long moment there was stillness. Minutes or hours later, she tensed as a figure approached. She could not move her head enough to see the figure, but could hear the delicate footsteps. All she could see was the black of the altar stone and the wall of the cavern, where a dozen prisoners sagged in their manacles and chains, held fast against the wall, almost all dolefully avoiding her gaze. They were mostly human, a few Antian. There was one other Tuliok there, of a different clan. Her chest was mottled with the green scales of the deep pharaoh. The deep pharaoh Tuliok met her eyes. She had a purple crest on her head and a deep cut across her brow, a smear of half-dried blood across her face. It was a comfort to see her. In the reefs of a wind sea they might have met with blower blades, clan against clan and claw against claw. But here there was only Tuliok, prisoners and monsters, and the two held each other's gaze for a long moment. "There's no point struggling, Deepkin," the figure said from behind her, and she snorted. The figure spoke and carefully enunciated Iskin, the trade tongue of the seas and lands along the Star Coast. There's no escape from this place. Gagged as she was, Tuliok could not speak, could not curse for figuring the name of her ancestors. She could do nothing. She tried to open her mind to the true current, as her broodmother had taught her, to find that place of control and awareness where she could hook herself onto the energy infused in everything, to find the pattern. But when she reached, there was no pattern. Nothing was there but chaos.